Space Marines are coming out of the 9th edition gate strong with one of the very first Codex releases, seeing massive updates, changes to points, new units, upgrades. It's all super exciting. What we're here to discuss today are the chapter tactics. We're going to be ranking them, discussing what they do, how they've changed, and kind of giving an overall idea of what to expect in 9th edition. Let's take a look. So first things first, it needs to be said, we're going to rank these, but they're all amazing. They're still Space Marines. This is a very powerful and flexible army. And what we're going to be doing is rating them according to how powerful they are, but keep in mind, even the very lowest tier of this is extremely powerful, very flexible, and you're going to have a lot of fun playing them.
Yeah, we're only going to be ranking the first founding chapters, so no Flesh Terrors, no Black Templars or anything like that. Although, to be honest, the first founding chapters generally are the strongest in our opinion. So we're going to go through and rank them from best to worst. But as you said, the worst are still amazing.
Very, very true.
But the best are amongst the best armies in all of 40K.
They're just kicking butt everywhere. And one other note about this, at time of writing, we do not yet have the Blood Angels Codex, now Codex, formerly Supplement, or now it'll be Supplement.
That's right.
We don't have any of those books that are still coming out.
No Blood Angels, Space Wolves, or Dark Angels. We have indexes.
That's right. So we'll be discussing them afterwards, but for now we're not going to be ranking them in the overall. We'll kind of give you a sense of them, but they're kind of very much up in the air.
Yeah.
So we'll discuss at the end. Let's go ahead and dive in, shall we?
All right.
So we've actually kind of broken these down to the tiers, right? We have three different tiers where there's basically 2 chapters in each that are very equivalent, right?
That's right.
So let's go ahead and talk about the top tier.
The very top. These are
the crop.
Absolute best.
Yes. So you know them, you've seen them. They're mean, they're green. It's the Salamanders.
That's right.
Just incredibly powerful. They have a lot of mid-board lethality. They can kill almost anything at ranged and in melee, somewhere in the middle of the board. And that's actually something that's really essential to playing 9th edition.
Yeah. So really, the heart of this army has been their stratagems. The pool of stratagems that they have and the effectiveness of them allows this army to have an answer for just about everything. Yeah. And historically, they had trouble using those strats because they rely on them so much they'd run out of CP. 9th edition has given them enough command points to make it work, which is why they've already been dominating, not to mention the game being played at that midboard, as you said, with that midboard lethality. Yep. The combination of that has really made them strong, even though the book nerfed them a bit. Yeah,
that's right.
They still remain in our top tier.
Absolutely. And actually, it's worth mentioning the fact that they did lose one of their rerolls in their core chapter tactic, the reroll to hit. They just have the reroll to wound. But despite that, things like their strats that are just so powerful and flexible really carry them through. Another massive change that we've seen in the book, and actually in all of the codexes Flamers are increased to 12-inch range.
Yes.
That's amazing for this army.
It fundamentally changed the usefulness of Flamers. You never saw Flamers outside of this army.
Yeah.
And even using your Flamers in this army, you could go several games without getting to use them once, because people would work so hard to stop you that sometimes you wouldn't be able to. Now, your primary Flamer platform is the Aggressors.
Totally.
Now, a lot of people might think, ooh, they got a nerf because they can't double shoot anymore. But in fact, a 12-inch range on them is better than double shooting because it's a lot better to shoot once than never.
That's right. It's important to remember that this was always a double activation shooting. So often you'd say, okay, I'm going to shoot this unit, I'm going to flame them, and then your opponent would just pull the units, the models that are in range. You actually don't end up shooting a second time. Now that 12-inch threat range is terrifying. Not to mention that
they can advance and shoot.
Exactly.
And because they advance and shoot, they don't even have to worry about being able to double shoot.
Yep.
They actually have a really big threat range, or they can come in from outflank, right? Strategic reserves. Tons more usefulness, and they're just as lethal as ever with the Flamers. But it's not just the Flamers that saw a buff. It's also the Meltas, and they're particularly good with Meltas, right?
So nasty. That's actually part of their super doctrine.
That's right.
+1 to wound with Flamers and Melta weapons. And the Meltas have now increased to include the new Melta rule where it's not roll 2d6, pick the highest. It's just d6 plus a certain flat amount, right?
Yeah, plus 2 or 4. And multi-Meltas have more shots. And you now have things like Eradicators, which are the best points for, like point for point, the best, most efficient Melta unit in the game right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So these weapons got better. They are the kings of these weapons. And so that was actually a really big buff that came out of it. Another thing I wanted to mention is the chapter tactic in general, right? So we mentioned that it got nerfed. It did, no way around that. You cannot reroll a hit and a wound. But you're still keeping the reroll to wound, which I have to say, that's actually the most important
That's the valuable
right?
one.
Because Space Marines, you have a million ways to still get rerolls on your core especially. It's the reroll to wound of 2 or a 3 that you get a lot of value from that. So that's fantastic.
Yes.
And the -1, ignoring -1 rend.
So excellent.
So even in the games we played.
Yeah,
right?
we've seen it come into play a lot. There's a lot of -1 rend. In fact, there's an even higher prevalence of it.
There is.
You got all those chainswords coming in at -1 rend.
Yeah.
They're not working on you anymore. And so I actually think it's there's a lot of people relying on that -1 that they're not going to be getting it. So Salamanders top tier because they do it all. They shoot, they fight, they're durable. They've got an answer to hordes, an answer to vehicles, and they really just they are the best of what Space Marines have to offer.
Right. Well said. Well said. So if those are the kings, who's the next on the throne? I would say
we could say the queens.
The
Why
queens.
not?
All right.
The queen's the best in chess.
This is that's true actually. So then this is actually the king now. This is the Whitescars.
That's right.
If you've seen us on the channel, we love Whitescars. We're kind of obsessed right now.
Yeah.
And they're good for a number of reasons. One of the big things is just their core ability. They can advance and charge. They can fall back and charge. And they even have a strat to fall back and shoot.
Yes.
But basically, they're very, very mobile. You cannot stop them. They're very much like Harlequins in the sense that they're going to be moving around, doing whatever movement stuff they want to do.
Yep.
And it's really difficult to stop them or slow them down in any meaningful way.
Warhammer has always been about movement, and 9th edition even more so. And so with the smaller board and their increased movement, this army is always a threat from anywhere to anywhere.
Right.
And it synergizes so well. A lot of times you have an army that has a chapter tactic, an ability that does this, but then they're actually good at that. This army, everything is one-track mind.
Yep.
It says, you know, we're going to make you really, really great at getting into combat, and then really amazing when you get to combat. And then you have all these amazing combat units, and then combat buffs, and then combat spells, and combat litanies. And it's like everything stacks together.
Right.
That is both their advantage and their disadvantage, right? Like that's what makes them this top tier, but it's also what makes them behind Salamanders.
Exactly. They just don't have that same level of tactical flexibility.
Yeah.
They're a really good hammer, but it's still a hammer. And sometimes you need, you know,
anvil.
An anvil.
That's right. And the Salamanders got that for you too, right?
Well said. Well said.
I think that's one of the things you have to think about is you just bring up, just for example, one of their small things, like their litany, their custom litany that is for their chaplain. It's a 6-inch aura of reroll all wounds. As of right now, it's for all units, not just core.
Right.
That rerolling wounds we know is a broken ability.
So nuts.
Rerolling wounds on one unit is a broken ability. Yeah. Doing it in an aura, with a combat army,
right,
on chaplains that now do it automatically or on a 2-up, it's all just too much.
Yeah.
That's just one ability, and the list goes on, right? Like their special character has a +1 to wound. That alone.
Also an aura.
Also an aura.
Nuts.
And so their combat is phenomenal, and we have to mention combat doctrine. Used to be one of the toughest because you wouldn't get to it till turn 3.
That's right.
And so you usually had incredible abilities. Blood Angels, Whitescars had amazing abilities in that combat doctrine.
Yep.
But they had to wait.
Right.
Not so anymore.
No. There's now the new stratagem that's available to all the Space Marines.
That's right.
2CP adaptive strategy.
Strategy is what it's called. That's right.
And essentially, you pick one unit, and that unit gets to be in all 3 doctrines at the same time for the rest of that turn.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Very, very strong.
It used to be, okay, you play aggressive against Whitescars at the early turns, kind of do what you can before they power up. But now the fact that any single unit could suddenly just pop into that, turn on.
1, right? They'll charge turn 1.
Exactly. And for Whitescars, amazing, ridiculously powerful super doctrine.
Yes.
+1 damage when you charge in melee. And that, so you come, it's already amazing with anything, right? A chainsword, even before they got better, 2 damage. Suddenly, the most mundane melee weapon becomes terrifying.
Absolutely.
Combine that with the reroll to wound.
And a good melee weapon, it can devastate the strongest.
It's crazy.
Especially when you're rerolling wounds, right? Like even if you have a power sword, or like a 2 damage mastercrafted power sword on a blade guard, that goes to 3 damage. And rerolling wounds again, like you'll kill knights with it.
So
because it's strength 5 now.
Right. And that's kind of, they're the kings of that, right? They have lots of units. It's very distributed. Makes it really hard to stop, right? Because all of these things are amazing. Outriders are amazing. Intercessors are amazing. Everything can hit you super hard. So it's really hard to just take out one thing unless you could like pop a chaplain.
Well, they're so fast that they're either charging you in 1 turn or 2 turns, and there's just so many of them.
That's right.
Yeah, really fantastic army, but there is answers to them, and if a lot of times people tech all the way into combat, and then if you have a really, really good army that can shoot, or even can take 1 hit and have you bounce off, and lots of armies are like that. Then that's their weakness.
That's definitely the way to fight them, and deployment is a big thing for them because they don't have a lot of those redeploys that some other people do, or ways to instantly Teleport, they also did lose a couple abilities, right? One of the really cool things for their bikes was the ability to advance and activate the invuln. Now, this was a core Space Marine strategy, right?
Yeah.
That you would get a 4+ invuln or a 3+ if you advanced
Yeah.
against shooting. That has changed now, so it's just an activated stratagem.
Just
one
a
CP,
-1 to hit.
-1 to hit, which is like, it's good.
Okay. And actually, they already have one like that. So
That's
the
right.
one you're talking about is called Born in the Saddle, and they have one called Ride Hard, Ride Fast.
Which
And
is
it's the same
now.
except you have to do it in your turn, so it's worse. But they could
Yeah.
make 2 biker units -1 to hit.
That's right.
It's something.
It's something, but it definitely,
It's not as
it was
otherwise.
one way of sort of countering heavy shooting, right? You could take a big 9-man squad of even just like regular bikes, run up, you can't kill them in shooting, and then when they hit you, you're dead.
Yeah.
So that's gone, but they're still incredibly powerful.
Okay, so this is the middle tier, tier 2 now.
Yep.
And these 2 units, or these 2 armies, I think we're having a tough time saying which one's better than the other.
Yeah.
So let's just call them roughly equivalent. They're actually very different. But we'll start with this one. We'll start with the classic, the Ultramarines.
Oh yes.
And the Ultramarines are very, very strong, but they're not as, they don't do any one thing as well as the Salamanders or the Whitescars. Both those armies are able to spike and do something really, really well. The Ultramarines are just kind of good at everything.
Yeah.
And that lack of a spike means that it's really hard to have those single turns where you just step on the gas that those other 2 armies can do.
Right.
And that's the thing I think holding them back a little bit. They're trying to be a jack of all a little too much.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Is they are jack of all trades.
Yeah.
They have fine melee because they're still Space Marines. They have really good shooting. They are very flexible. They have a lot of movement tricks. But at the end of the day, they can't throttle things quite as well.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason that they're not quite up at the same tier as the other 2. But having said that, they do have things like amazing control over tactical doctrine.
Yeah.
Now, all of the Space Marine chapters lost the ability to just move your entire army from one doctrine to another, but they have two ways beyond just adaptive strategy to actually pick a unit and say, you're going to be in tactical doctrine this turn. And that activates a million abilities for aggressors, intercessors,
and tactical doctrine is already the doctrine you could stay in the longest.
Right.
So for the units you care about, you're effectively in tactical doctrine the whole game.
Which is funny enough. The 2 of the big winners actually were quite happy to be in these later doctrines, right? And this is no different. Turns 2 and 3, you can be in it, then you can turn it on later on. So that's really great. And of course, their chapter tactic is huge. They can back up from combat and still shoot at -1.
Which is good for everything.
It's good for everything. Vehicles especially, right? We have things like the repulsors, all the vehicles that they can shoot in combat, but they got hurt really hard by not being able to just run away and shoot and things like that. So you
thankfully,
get that
there is a strat to allow some vehicles, anything with the repulsor chassis, is that right, to fall back to shoot. But this could do it army-wide. So what this army specializes in is that mid-board control and that mid-board shooting, because they can get all their guns really close, where they're up on the objectives and shooting you. Even when you tag them, they still fight like Space Marines, but then you haven't shut down their firepower.
Exactly.
And they could even bully with their vehicles.
Right.
Because they don't have to worry about them getting touched, so they can stay up.
And it's back to that concept of jack of all trades, right?
Yeah.
If you have one repulsor, totally, you can use the strat, fall back, and shoot with no penalty, right? The Ultramarines are interesting because they can do that with multiple of these vehicles, and it becomes a different ability, right? So that's a really interesting thing, I think. The other thing is they're probably the least affected by the introduction of the core mechanic, right? Space Marines overall, I think, got off very easy with this.
I agree.
Where, sure, most rolls and rerolls don't work on non-core units, but everything basically, except for vehicles and characters, is core.
Yes.
Now, Ultramarines particularly have some really great use of core, right? This is probably the biggest use of things like tactical doctrine. That's honestly the main thing.
Well, there's also there's a strat to reroll for Ultramarine units, and it's a reroll all hits with troops, which is effectively core. But one of the things to call out here is, as of right now, Gilliman still provides rerolls to all Ultramarines.
Yeah, it's an
and so this
They're
is
all core Ultramarines.
Yeah, right. So so I think that he's still providing a big buff for kind of rerolls that we've seen, and I think that this army in general is kind of just taking what Space Marines are best at, which it's traditionally they've been slightly better at shooting than combat, although I think the tides are turning on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you want to play a shooting Space Marine, I think these ones do it. They do it the best.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have really any specific tools for melee.
That's right.
They can do it, but you know.
Yeah, you can still put Blade Guard in there,
but
there's just nothing special about Blade Guard as Ultramarines. They look sharp.
That's right.
Nice snappy dressers, you know?
Right.
But that's about it.
Now, the other army in this sort of mid-tier category is another tactical doctrine army, funny enough. This is the emo boys, the Raven Guard.
That's right.
Let's talk about this. We've had a lot of discussions about the similarities between these two chapters, and one of the similarities that they do have is ability to move and reposition things, right?
Yeah, sure.
With Ultramarines, it's falling back, they're redeploying before the game. Raven Guard, it's all about doing things like deep strikes, pre-game moves.
That's right.
Even teleports with some of their spells. So at the end of the day, same idea. They have a lot of ways of manipulating movement, which also is kind of how you win and play this game right now.
Okay, so taken on its own,
Sure.
the Raven Guard movement abilities could make them the very best Space Marine chapter.
Agreed.
Right? Anytime you have an army that specializes in mobility, that army is in a contention to be the best army.
Yep.
But the thing holding them back here is that their abilities just don't synergize.
No.
Right? We talked about the Whitescars where everything stacks towards this one ultimate purpose.
Right.
In Raven Guard, a lot of things go in different directions. Their chapter tactic makes them sound like they want to be backfield.
Right.
Their base abilities want them upfield.
Yep.
Right? They want to be, do they want to be a shooting chapter? Do they want to be a combat chapter? Do they really want to try and target characters? Or is that ability kind of a trap, you know, and it's just a small efficiency now and then?
Their super doctrine kind of encapsulates that confusion, right?
Yeah.
Because you think, okay, just in case you guys don't know, it's +1 to hit and to wound against characters in tactical.
That's right.
Now, this is just incredible because, okay, are you shooting? Well, then you want to be a sniper, in which case you want to be in the Devastator doctrine.
Yep.
Cool, well, then you don't get that. When you're tactical, well, none of, if you're shooting, again, you can't really target characters with those types of weapons. Okay, well, I want to be an assault doctrine, and then I'm getting bonuses in melee, but then I'm not getting that tactical bonus. So it's most confused kind of mismatch of these things that kind of encapsulates the biggest problem for them.
That's what's holding them back.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else about them is pretty solid when it comes to their control of the battlefield. And that's a thing that almost no other Space Marine chapter has. Right. They're pretty unique. Blood Angels get close because they have a lot of deep strike. Yep. But we're going to even see how that plays out as of right now of writing. They don't have a lot of that board control. So you take some of the most powerful data sheets in the game and you say, I can put them where I want them.
Right.
This should be a really powerful army. I just wish there was a bit more synergy.
Yeah, very well said. They do have great delivery mechanisms though, right? So Space Marines in general got some more. Really, we're thinking about things like strategic reserves.
Yeah, anyone can go in strategic reserve.
Exactly.
Right?
The difference is Raven Guard, you can still deep strike.
Yeah.
So we've played many games with Eradicators at this point. I'm sure many of you out there have as well.
Yeah.
And the strategic reserves is quite good for getting them in position. Things like deep striking though almost guarantees you're going to be able to hit your target and actually get those spots. So that's really nice. The pregame is nice. There's several ways that they're good at delivering things into their position in battle.
There's a couple other things that are trade-offs. I'd say they've always had one of the best lists of warlord traits and even relics. They level up the armies in really meaningful ways, but at the same time, their strat library isn't quite the toolbox that we saw with even Ultramarines or especially with Salamanders. Right? The toolbox isn't quite as deep. So these are all trade-offs. It's, as I'm saying, it's like there's really, really goods and there's like mediocres. And that's what's holding them into that middle spot. I think even with, if they just changed their doctrine a little bit, they could spike up. And I think if you run them as a successor, even with the right play successor, and you leaned into the combat a little more, they could easily start to bump up into that higher tier.
I totally agree, and it only became more so the case with the new update because their chapter tactic also, like the Salamanders, did take a hit, right?
It took a hit.
It's more like we're seeing this trend of stealthy things are saying, okay, we have to be 18 away now rather than 12, which
and on a smaller board.
And on a small, exactly. 18 is like that's way too much right now.
So far.
So you can still be in cover within 12, and that gives you some of the bonuses, but it's very confused. So
and you're not stacking minuses to hit.
Exactly.
And so, okay, you're -1 to hit. Great. Well, I just advanced with my combi weapon, shooting through a forest. It's fine. I was going to be at -1 anyways. I don't care. So yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah, they're very wonky. But again, I think we both think that they're quite powerful. So if we seem confused about them, it's because there's a lot of weird things with them.
It's up and down.
But they can still be great. So definitely check them out. Now we're getting to the bottom
tier?
of the barrel. Yep.
Now again, bottom of the barrel here, still amazing.
It's still like several shelves above the other barrels, right?
Yeah, that's right. This is still premium whiskey here.
That's right.
It's just the worst barrel. So so these two armies, I think we do have a clear better and worse. So the second worst army we're going to say is the Iron Hands. Now this might be funny for you all to hear,
I know.
given that they were a boogeyman not all that long ago.
No.
They were unstoppable. They won LVO last year.
Yep.
And now we're saying they're bottom tier here. there's been a number of nerfs to them.
Yeah.
After LVO, they nerfed a couple of the key units that made them work. The Chaplain Dreadnoughts. They nerfed the ability to pass off wounds from the Leviathan Dread.
Yep.
The Leviathan Dread went way up in points, right?
Their strats got more expensive.
Their strats, several of their strats went up.
Yeah.
They limited the ability to double, triple heal a vehicle.
Right.
A bunch of their relics didn't do what they were doing. Now, then they had the Tactical Doctrine, or the Devastator Doctrine, that you can only be in first turn. So we just saw them chip away. Like, it was like 20 chips away at the Iron Hands, and they could not withstand that many chips. And now the new book comes out and chipped another couple things away, right? Most notably, the fact that the Apothecary, which became amazing. Like, the Apothecary might even be the best unit in the book.
Oh, for sure.
But it does nothing for this army because it just gives a 6-up Feel No Pain, which this army already has.
Yeah, it used to stack, right? It used to say, okay, you get a 6-up, but if you have the Iron Hands chapter tactic, then this goes to a 5-up. And that just took already durable units and made them unreasonably difficult to move. And so that's all gone. So you can get a 6-up, but guess what? You already had a 6-up. So you're actually losing efficiency on one of the most amazing units in the book.
That's right.
Which is probably fair. But
so that's another notch off them. But the list of notches don't end there, right? Like, at the start of 9th edition, we saw that first turn mattered less as a damage output turn,
right?
As long as you have proper terrain,
right?
And that means that Devastator Doctrine could get wasted. So you didn't really even get to do, like, your opponent just chose to play it cool turn 1,
right?
Or, hey, let you go first, I'm hiding.
Right.
You don't really get much out of your turn 1.
Well, that's the thing, too, because the things that did get hit in the Space Marine Codex, and there weren't many, right, were things like the Thunderfire Cannons. Even the Whirlwinds did go up to reasonable points in the summer points update. And so, cool. You should not be shot at by an Iron Hands player when they're in Dev Doctrine unless you choose to be. And that's a big problem for them. They're like, cool, you cannot do your thing. And they're not the best targets for things like adaptive strategy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, cool, you're in heavy doctrine. That's 2 CP for some rerolls, I guess.
Oh, well, they already have a 1 CP strat to go into Dev Doctrine.
That's
anyway.
right.
So you could do it twice if you really need to, but
it's nothing great.
Yeah, and the Codex, there was even more hits on them, right? Like the fact that they loved to Overwatch.
Yep.
They were Overwatching on 5s. Not only did they take that off their chapter tactic now, but at the start of 9th edition, Overwatch is something you pay for now.
Paying for it.
And so, yeah, they have strats to Overwatch, but that used to be a huge advantage to this army, especially when you were Overwatching on 5s or 4s and re-rolling everything from Chapter Masters. Those core tactics, they don't work.
No.
And speaking of Chapter Masters and re-rolls and everything, this army loves core.
Yep.
Or sorry, this army loved to not be core. It loved vehicles.
Yeah.
And its special abilities are all vehicles. Well, now vehicles aren't core. They've taken a hit. So the lists just keep going for them.
It's really rough. They even lost Master of the Forge used to be disgusting.
Yeah.
It's it was the +1 to hit within 6 inches of
for all vehicles.
Your Tech Marine for all vehicles.
Which was unreasonable.
Which you were also rerolling everything before. So now you lost the rerolls, you lost the bonus to hit. You can, I will say this, Iron Hands players, Tech Marines now, you can pick a vehicle, give them +1 to hit. So
yeah, which is what Pharaohs already could do.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, Pharaohs is better. I think he got some ballistic skill too.
That's true.
So it's a little better.
The Signums are, exactly. But that's a big hit, right? They wanted to play vehicles. Dreadnoughts are still great, so you can play a Dreadnought heavy one.
Yeah, that's actually the coolest army for them.
I think it's interesting.
But we should point out, although Dreadnoughts are good, the whole rest of the book got better at killing vehicles. Like things like Eradicators and even the Hellblasters that we hadn't seen in forever.
Yep.
Everything got more lethal against vehicles. And so if you're trying to play an Iron Hands vehicle army, be prepared for people to be able to kind of wipe them out really quick, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, this army's still amazing. It went from being the army that anyone could pick up and play and win. Right. Both of us won a GT without a single practice game with Iron Hands. Is that right?
Yeah.
Because the army was that silly good.
Yeah.
And we made a million mistakes. We're like, oh, whoops, I forgot to shoot a whole tank.
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter. They were so good. We just won. So they've made a number of cuts to that army. Yes. And so now, okay, unfortunately, I do think they cut them too far.
I think so.
But I think everyone needs a cooling. Everyone needs to chill on the Iron Hands a little bit.
They can sit in the corner for a little bit.
That's right. They get a timeout.
Exactly. And hey, they're still Space Marines. They're still powerful.
Yeah.
Now,
if you're doing the math, you could guess who the bottom of the barrel is here.
As they say in a certain baking show, I have the unfortunate job of announcing the worst chapter, which is my chapter, the Imperial Fists. And
so sorry.
Gosh, the hits just keep coming with them, don't they?
They are still the most stylish. I will give them that.
They're so pretty.
The yellow looks so sharp.
I started with the paint scheme. I'm finishing with the paint scheme. That's what I love. So they already were hit massively by the doctrine changes way back in spring, first of all, right? So you would stay in Devastator Doctrine the whole time. You could play that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That got hit to be cool. You can try to punch someone really hard turn 1. That got hurt, especially with the advent of like Thunderfires and Whirlwinds and things like that getting more expensive. The nail in the coffin now, because that is the fact that there's a million thoughts right now. Their Super Doctrine got nerfed once more.
Yes.
No longer can your heavy bolters get +1 damage against vehicles. You can only get +1 to damage against vehicles when attacking with heavy weapons that have a strength characteristic of 7 or higher.
And it has to be a heavy weapon too.
Yes.
So even like an Eradicator, it doesn't work because it's an assault weapon.
Oh, you're right.
Wow.
It's so bad.
It's too situational. It was already unreasonably situational.
Yeah.
Because how often would you come up against no vehicle armies? You'd play against my Tau.
Sure.
I'm all monsters.
Cool.
You play against Nids, it's all monsters. You play against a lot of Harlequins and things like that.
Yeah.
No vehicles.
Exactly.
You play against my Whitescars, no vehicles, right?
During turn 1, right? You're going to be hidden the whole time. I can't shoot you reasonably out of line of sight. And now, so that stratagem comes along. We have adaptive strategy. Cool. Heavy intercessors are a good multi-purpose unit. Boom, that's gone. Doesn't work on them.
And
so
I need to stress the thing about the fists, and maybe people don't appreciate this.
Sure.
Space Marines are pricey units. I know they're undercosted most of the time, but they're still pricey. You couldn't often afford to build in your chapter command, your horde clearing, and your vehicle clearing into one list.
Right.
It was actually, you had to kind of pick 2 out of 3.
Yep.
And the fists, the special thing was you could forget the vehicle clearing and build only horde clearing. And that horde clearing was also good at killing vehicles.
Absolutely.
That was kind of the whole trick of the army. Now what they've said, if you want that vehicle potential, you still have to tech back into that vehicle killing, which is the whole thing they were supposed to be able to be good at. If you want the anti-vehicle guns, you already kill vehicles. You don't need help. That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Right?
And they actually got hit by Chapter Master in that same regard.
So they got hit in so many ways.
Actually,
their litany was all about Overwatch. You don't Overwatch anymore. Like, so everything's bad.
It doesn't have to be a heavy weapon, because I'm just remembering fondly my stalker bolters.
Okay.
Right? No, they were heavy. So
they were heavy.
We're good. Yeah. That was a one kind of final strategy was still you could have your stalker bolters. Everyone's moving, hitting on 4s, but you get the rerolls. Well, now you can maybe have 1 unit of stalkers. Still not a big fan.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then their stratagems kind of follow along this same narrow path of they're highly situational. They're overly expensive.
Yeah.
And they often don't do that much. So a great example, of course, we talked about Salamanders. 1 command point with now a core unit, +1 to wound. And you can be anything against anything.
Basically,
The Imperial Fists version, 2 CP, only against a vehicle, +1 to wound.
Yeah. It's just infinitely worse,
Strictly
right?
worse. And there's many instances of that.
A lot of, these are the 2 Devastator Doctrine armies.
Yes.
And in fact, this is one of the main reasons they're at the bottom. But what to look at here is both of these armies, Iron Hands and Fists, took a lot of the same nerfs. But the Iron Hands started on top, and the Fists already were on the bottom. Or very close to it.
After the doctrine changes, yeah.
No, even before the doctrine changes, they were not necessarily, they were like mid to bottom. And so both of them took a huge drop down.
Right.
One of them came down from the top, and so it's still pretty good. One of them was like, if it wasn't bottom, it was bottom middle.
Right.
And it fell by about the same amount.
Exactly.
And so Fists, unfortunately, there's just very little synergy at all. The only reason to play Fists is if you want Space Marine data sheets painted yellow. And that's a good reason, because Space Marine data sheets are amazing, but you really get very little extra benefit for being a Fist.
They're a good successor color scheme, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Make them a successor, but also still paint them yellow.
Right,
because they still look good in yellow.
Very stylish.
Yeah.
So
maybe one day they'll get, you know what?
Yeah.
How about this?
Yeah.
Maybe if they'll end up building fortifications for every faction, and then you'll see tons of fortifications, and they'll be really good at getting them.
Yes, that's right. I'm holding out hope. Hammerfall Bunker would still be fun with them.
Yeah.
They do get the chapter tactic. So that is the core chapters we want to talk about.
Kind of the traditional ones.
These are the traditional ones, the one that we feel are relatively solid in the rules, probably not likely to change very much in the coming weeks at time of release. Let's talk about some other chapters in a bonus round.
The other first founding, so we've got the Blood Angels, we've got the Dark Angels, and the Space Wolves. Now, as of filming, they all had an index release.
Right.
What this is a temporary supplement that pairs with the new Codex Space Marines to allow you to play these factions. Their old Codex and their old Psychic Awakening is out of play for however long it takes to get their full book. Now, for Blood Angels and Space Wolves, they said by the end of year, but that could mean December. And for Dark Angels, they haven't said, but we should, I'm guessing shortly after.
Just hoping.
That's what I hope. Okay, so you're going to be living with these books for 1 month to, I don't know, maybe 3 months, 4 months. And in that meantime, they've changed a lot, but we don't know where they're going to end up, right? So we're just going to tell you a little bit of our opinion about where they are today. It's likely going to change entirely by the time the book comes out.
That's right. So the first one we're going to talk about is Blood Angels. Now, it's funny. It's been funny seeing the reactions of the community to the Blood Angels. And I think we are a bit kind of contrary to some of the Blood Angels players, because let's say this. They did lose much of their movement strats, right?
They lost a ton of strats.
They did, and that's a big, big deal.
All of these armies lost most of their strats.
Yeah.
They went down from 3 or 4 pages of strats to like 4 strats, plus the Space Marine ones.
It's a big deal.
Right?
So having said that, let's talk about why we still really like them. One, they are stupidly point efficient.
Yeah.
That's actually the note we made.
Yeah. Stupidly point efficient. It says it right here. Stupidly point efficient. The truth is that things like Death Company, but in particular, we're talking about Sanguinary Guard.
Oh my gosh.
If you really try to compare Sanguinary Guard point for point with just about any other unit we could find,
it's unreasonable.
It's really unreasonable. They're very, very good. And that is before you start stacking on the other buffs that they've seen, like the ability to go into Combat Doctrine, the extra attacks they got, and the extra damage, the extra strength, all of these things, and all of the things I'm talking about, much like the Whitescars, they all synergize towards that thing the unit wanted to do and be anyways. And so I'd say part of the reason we're saying this army is so good, it all comes down to the Sanguinary Guard, but also to the Sanguinary Priests and even the Sanguinor.
Well, that was a huge buff. So we were already excited at the notion of the ability to put them into Assault Doctrine with the core rulebook stratagem. And then the FAQ dropped and said, now Apothecaries and Sanguinary Priests.
It's just the Sanguinary Priests. I don't think they're...
There's 2 swords. It might be not the Apothecary, but the Sanguinary Priest at least picks a unit within 6, puts them into Assault Doctrine immediately. Turn 1, you could do this.
It's so mean.
What?
It's very, very mean.
So same idea. It's scary for the Whitescars, right? Is that like you could have this threat suddenly on the board, and it will destroy anything it touches. So that's a big, massive change.
Yeah,
to how they work.
You know, before we continue, I want to back up and say, I'm just curious. From your, we talked about these 3 armies.
Sure.
As they stand right now, what rank are they in your opinion? I know where I stand on this, but are we putting them tier 1, 2, or 3?
Okay.
Or
in the old tiers?
Yeah, the other tiers that we just
they're all in the top tier.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
All 3 of these, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels are all tier 1 right now. So if you're out there thinking, oh, my Blood Angels lost so much, or I lost my favorite strat from Dark Angels, no. These are all
so good.
These are all buffs, and they're all incredible buffs.
Yes. The army will play a bit differently than you're used to, right?
Yeah.
But, my God.
And it's only going to get better?
That's the thing.
Hopefully
like, what are they
not.
It'd be really messed up if they also take stuff away.
If all 3 of them got better than where they are today, it would make them, like, we would need the S tier. We would need, like, the tier above tier 1.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It's nuts.
That would be unreasonable. I really hope they rebalance them a little bit.
Totally.
Okay,
so what's next?
That was the Blood Angels. We're not going to go too deep into the Blood Angels. We've already said it. Let's talk about the Space Wolves. I'd say of the 3, they feel the least powerful of the 3. But we're still talking about Queen. They're all Queens here.
Right,
so,
that's right.
They're the bottom of that list. But the army-wide Heroic Intervention, in 9th edition in particular, what an incredible ability.
It's a huge deal. One thing we've talked about in our many videos is you want to be able to have enough bodies that you can cover a point, hold a point, keep someone out of 3 inches, or failing that, have amazing Heroic Intervention.
Yeah.
Custodies can do that, Death Guard can do that, and guess what? Now the entire Space Wolf army can do that, and they get amazing like melee bodies.
Yeah, and they still left them with a strat for a 6-inch Heroic Intervention.
Right.
Which the funny thing is, I'm not telling you to gotcha your opponents, but a lot of them might be like, okay, I'm careful, I'm outside of 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I know your army can heroically intervene 3. I'm just outside of 3, and you're like, okay, 6 inches, and they're like, I worked so hard on this plan,
right.
And it's so powerful. We've won so many games through Heroic Intervention.
It was already powerful on the Wolves, knowing that you could have 1 extra unit do it. That's not a character, but now it's like impossible to stop them. It's just absolutely nuts.
And once they get into combat, they're still ruthless.
They're complete ballers. They're great.
So the other big thing is the I'd say the Thunderwolf Cavalry.
Big winners, finally.
Big winners, big winners. They have that extra wound.
Yeah.
They have that extra armor save now. They did lose 1 invulnerable save because of the Storm Shield change, but I'll take the 2-up save anytime because chip damage always used to wreck them. And with the 2-up save and the extra wound, chip damage isn't really something they're scared of.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, their chain swords and their power fists are amazing weapon options. The Thunderhammer, not so much.
No, we like the power fists are cheaper and do very similar things.
Yeah.
And They can run and charge.
They advance and charge.
All of the
Wow.
the actual wolves, the physical wolf models, can have the ability to advance and charge.
Any unit that has wolf models. So
Fenrisian
even the
wolves,
sled.
Yeah.
Well,
someone's gonna be like, did blood claw wolfy wolves get to wolf? No. Like the physical, literal wolves.
That's right. So I'm really loving this unit.
So
We've got a
good.
bunch of them here
I'm
with
excited.
all these power fists and things. So now all of a sudden I'm vindicated. We're gonna be putting those power fists on the table.
Power fists.
And even the chain swords. I used to love them with chain swords.
Yeah.
Now with the extra AP, it's good. And when you get them into that assault doctrine, which you can do,
That's right.
turn 1,
Well,
it's all good.
It keeps them really cheap and set now. So the wolves already were at -1 AP.
Yeah.
Now the guys on top are also -1 AP. Going to the extra AP from turn 3 onwards. My God, I'm really happy about this.
You know,
change.
I'm actually surprised.
So excited for them.
They didn't nerf Ragnar at all. He's still 130 points, and he still fights like an entire army. And of all the strats they kept Touch of the Wild.
I saw that.
So I can still get my 20 attacks with Ragnar.
Still gonna touch me.
So
Gosh.
it's although he doesn't reroll his own ones now, but who cares?
Grace.
Who
Saving
cares?
grace.
I'll just get extra free attacks
That's
on my
right.
6s. So there were big losers in this book.
There
though.
were, yeah.
And the Wolfen, I can't believe how many hits they took to this unit. The Wolfen have taken a huge drop. Maybe they're still okay. Their points went down as well, right? I think, but they've taken an enormous drop, and they're nowhere near the unit they used to be.
Yeah, well, we were already speculating. We said, okay, well, the Storm Shield buff, the buff part of it is good because of power armor, because you're getting +1 to your current save.
That's right.
But Wolfen they only had a 4-up.
That's right.
So like you actually, it is a nerf.
So you get a 3-up armor save, and you get a 4-up invuln
instead of a 3-up invuln before.
Yeah,
it's just worse. So they obviously did that, and then they went even farther. They did things like they made T5. That's nice.
Okay.
They lost advance and charge.
Yeah.
They lost the buffing auras.
Yeah.
They
don't fight when they die.
They don't fight when they die.
When they already have fought. If I'm not mistaken, I might be going too far here. I think they lost the Feel No Pain also.
No, the Feel No Pain I'm fairly certain of. Yeah, and the double fighting thing. Now that we've seen the rest of the Space Marine Codex, I understand, but still sucks.
And Thunderhammers got worse overall.
Yep.
And so the list just keeps going. They can't do actions.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things in there.
They're core, right? Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fine. I don't even know if that's true.
Which
but,
you have to like keep back and
So that's a shame. If you had a lot of them, I'm hoping. You know what I really wished? I could have taken all of that if they made them considerably cheaper and they made the non-Thunderhammer options good.
Yeah.
But the claws, they didn't really make them very interesting. I wish they made them a little better. Now, cool. All your other troops, your Grey Hunters, your Blood Claws, they all went up to 2 wounds. In our analysis, they're still not quite as good as their Primaris brethren.
Yeah.
Like a Blood Claw actually is outperformed still by an Assault Intercessor. They're the exact same points cost, and they're just the Assault Intercessor is just slightly better. Yeah. So they're really good, and if you really love rhinos and things like that, that's what could put them over top. But anyways, it's mostly the Heroic Intervention, the Advance and Charge, and the Thunderwolves. That's why we're saying the Space Wolves are kind of at the bottom of this list.
Oh, the +1 to hit is also nice for the characters, right? So the chapter tactic to get +1 to hit is nice in a world where you might want to take a Power Fist, but you're not rerolling. So just a side note. Again, really powerful, really scary faction.
Yeah. So let's talk about another. This is the middle. This is between Blood Angels and.
So this is the weirdest one to me.
Yeah.
Because they actually don't have many options that are like completely nuts. There was one thing that kind of broke the internet on this one.
Yeah, so this is the Dark Angels.
Dark Angels.
And by now, I'm sure you know. I hope you've heard. They gave. There's a rule called Inner Circle.
Yeah.
Lots of things have Inner Circle. This is representing kind of their elite troops, and they've always kind of been immune to morale and things like that. But anything that's Inner Circle and infantry, cannot be wounded on anything but a 4-up. So this we would call this like permanent transhuman.
Yeah.
And what this means is all the Terminators, wow, they're all super durable now.
They had a strat before to give -1 to wound, which was cool because it was a cheaper alternative to transhuman.
Yeah.
But keep in mind now, if you're non-Primaris, you wouldn't be able to do transhuman at all.
That's
now,
right.
This is a bunch of Terminators with amazing saves, an extra wound, ignoring anything to wound of less than a 4. Yeah. It's a problem.
Terminators are already a winner in 9th edition. In our analysis, the point effectiveness and the output of a Terminator is good. And with all the abilities to give OBSEC to Terminators and hold that center of the board, Now all of a sudden they don't need to be that unit that comes in deep strikes and strikes at the heart.
Right.
They'll just stand there and win you the game.
Yeah, just
and
walk up the board.
they can walk up, yeah, or they can deep strike right onto the center of the board. And now you can't even shoot them off there, right? They were already Terminators. They're already hard to shoot off. You can't, and when you come in to fight them, you're probably not going to clear them. It's a lot of efficiency, is what it is. There's nothing overly clever about any of it. Like, it's not like you have lots of opportunities for cool play or really strategic thinking or whatever. It's like, great, I'm just going to tech into a bunch of Terminators because it's mega points efficient.
Exactly, and that's why I feel the strangest about it, because it's so over the top, but it's really just the one thing. In fact, they even lost some of their more interesting options.
They lost a ton of all their cool play. I think was lost.
Weapons of the Dark Age is gone.
Well, for now.
That's their thing.
Let's assume it's coming back.
Well, let's hope. They need something to be like, well, we're the plasma guys, right?
Yeah.
And then they also currently, again, don't have the ability to actually have the close deep strike onto a Raven Wing biker, which was kind of their whole shtick for actually delivering them. So, again, mixed feelings because this is really cool, but you don't have all your tools. Yeah. Who knows what's going to change? So they're kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah, I think it's really, really tough. If you just put a bunch of Terminators on the board and hold the center of the board, are you going to win a lot of games with Dark Angels right now?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Right? A lot of people just don't have an answer to it.
No.
And sorry.
Bring your Catans, bring your
the
Nightbringers.
And the Deathwing Knights got buffed, and like they have one more weapon skill and all kinds of good stuff. So yeah, this is going to be a hard army to beat. Hopefully they rethink it a bit because I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I don't like it.
Yeah.
The next one is also a fascinating and also totally busted combination. Deathwatch. Deathwatch have had a big update to how their kill teams work. One of the main things is there's now a third type of kill team. Right? We've had the Firstborn kill teams, we've had the Primaris kill teams, and now we have the Gravis kill teams. And so that basically clumps what kinds of units can be combined together.
They actually have many more kill teams now, right? Because they have the biker versions and so they've made it way more complicated. It's
so complicated and it's so silly the kinds of combinations you can get.
Yeah.
The Gravis, I think, are a big problem.
And it's not well fleshed out, right?
It's not in an interesting way.
The index is like really light on details for making kill teams.
Yeah. It's a weird stopover. Again, Deathwatch is one of the codexes that's coming out sooner than later.
Right. Before the end of the year, they said for this one, right?
So they need it because this is going to be very strange. A couple problems.
Yeah. The rules are actually broken.
They are broken.
Let's first say, the way it's written today,
it's busted.
There's actual mistakes.
Yes.
We've checked with some of the other playtesters, and they're actual mistakes.
Do not play your Outriders as infantry.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that.
Right. Don't do that. So there's mistakes, and there may even be more than we've caught.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
one of the things that's horrible is you can take 5 Outriders in a kill team.
That's right.
And now kill teams are troops. Troops are OBSEC. Everyone's OBSEC. Now you combat squad. Well, suddenly I just have a five-man Outrider squad.
And normally you can only take Outriders. These are new Primaris spikes and squads of 3. Going up to 5 is really big because these guys are one of the best units in the whole game as far as kind of like points effectiveness.
Yes.
And having the ability to take just a 5-man squad's good. Having the ability to take as many of those as you want.
That's right. There's no rule of 3 because they're all troops. So.
And currently the rules are broken on them, giving them the infantry keyword.
Yeah.
So they'll drive right through walls.
And up walls.
Yeah, and up walls. That's awesome.
And perform actions. It breaks the game.
So don't do that. They're going to fix that. I think this one, I don't think it's so worth us talking about until we get a lot more rules.
Agreed.
I do think, though, that the way they've written special issue ammunition is probably the way they're going to keep it.
It's good.
And they're probably going to keep it.
Yeah. So one of the most notable ones is poison no longer just auto wounds on a 2. It's a +1 to wound.
Which is excellent.
Still amazing.
Which is excellent.
Yeah.
And in some cases might be a 2-up still.
Exactly.
But most of the times it's probably going to be a 3-up.
I understand it's largely a nerf, but I think there's a few changes to the other ones, but overall they're good. They're sort of getting back to these core ideas of how 9th edition buffs and changes and modifications should work, and it's very clear that's what they want.
All your special issue ammunition to have use in a game.
Yeah.
Like you want during a game, you want it to be like, I used all of them.
Right.
That would be the best design, but that was rarely the case. It was like you didn't even need to ask. It's like you didn't even declare which one. It was like I'm wounding on 2s.
Right. Exactly.
And it was very rare situations. Like I'm out of range. Fine, I'll take the extra range. But it's not like if I was in range, I always used that. That was it.
Exactly.
Right? So it wasn't worth it.
Right. One other change that is not actually specific to Deathwatch, but they benefit greatly from it. So Deathwatch used to do this thing, and probably would still do this thing, where you'd have something like a single Terminator.
Right.
And you'd say, well, I'm going to, tank it on the Terminator for the big shots, throw for the small shots on the other guys, whatever. You have throwaways, you have your tank.
Right.
9th edition changed the way that allocating wounds works, so that if you start allocating wounds to one model, you have to continue regardless of whether or not you lose a wound. So suddenly you say, okay, well, I have to tank everything on my Terminator, my high armor save or high invuln save model. So that actually was a hurt.
This is an incredibly, we should point out, this is an incredibly advanced Warhammer rule.
This is true.
You're probably not using this in your games at home.
Yeah.
But it was so strong that if you're a master of it, the efficiency you would get at like a tournament level play would be crucial. Why don't we just describe how you would use this and how you can't anymore?
Yeah.
So, okay, if someone's shooting at you and they have a single unit that has mixed weapons.
Sure.
Right? It's got a bunch of bolters and it's got an like a las cannon,
Yep.
right? And they're shooting at you and you have mixed units. So you have one storm shield on a Terminator and then you have a bunch of other little shots or something like that, right? You could choose to say, okay, I'm going to take the no AP shots on the person with a 2-up save, and I'm going to take this big multi-damage shot and I'm just going to make you kill one of my useless 1 wound guys. And so you can mix and match. And you can be very, very careful and clever about how you allocate. Now, as soon as you allocate your first damage, everything in the pool goes against that model until it's dead.
Yep.
There's no splitting it up. And so you could still be clever here, but far less clever. There's less room to play in this space. So then that means there's less room to abuse these multi-model squads. So that was a strength of this army.
It also slowed the game down dramatically.
Oh yeah, it
Because
wasn't
like
good.
Said, it wasn't like a simple thing. It was like, yeah, you have to math it out and think about this, and are you juking them out for this other weapon? It was silly.
And it confused a lot of people because a lot of people weren't aware of this, and so the Death Guard player would be there, and it's like, I'm taking this one here, this one here, this one here, this one here. It's like, how many wounds did you do them all? Did we forget any?
Right, exactly. So now with the changes to Storm Shields, as you've probably heard, it's +1 armor save and 4+ invuln. So suddenly your Terminator that pretty much has to tank everything is better at absorbing the small fire, and he's your only invuln really for the big fire. So he kind of has this more multi-purpose role for just tanking stuff in general.
Sure.
And like, cool. We took away that decision for Deathwatch players. Let's make sure they have something that's at least pretty much just better. But
okay, so those are all the chapters ranked. Again, they're all amazing, but there are some really impressive ones out here. Curious to see what you guys think in the comments below. What you think is the best chapter, and if you would rank the tiers any differently, because all of these are good, and a lot of them are really close. Especially like that middle tier is like, are some of them just above or whatever? So love to hear your opinions because really it could go different ways.
There's still so much to be tested and tried, and I'll probably FAQ'd again. So definitely let us know. And if you did enjoy this video and want to see more videos, definitely like and subscribe below. And if you want to get access to even more content, we have our Premium Titans membership. There's a join button just down below. You can go ahead and click that. That's going to get you a bunch of different things. It's going to get you access to members-only battle reports. That'll be available both live and after the fact. So you get the whole vault of the members-only videos that we've done. You're also going to get access to special channels in our Discord where we vote on.
And the Discord's blown up.
It has so many people.
Many great members in there. Lots of chat. Tons going on.
And that one is, so the Discord in general is completely open to everyone. Come in, just say hi. If you become a member, you get access to the voting sections in there where you can actually influence what we do in the future on the channel. And let's not forget the special emojis.
Of course.
We have some amazing 40K themed emojis that are hilarious. So that's all, $5 a month. Hit the join button down below. Otherwise, we have a bunch of new content for you guys.
Yeah, we're going to be continuing to cover these books for the next couple weeks. So I'm sure you've seen all the great coverage that we've already had. We've got even more coming. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of this great new book release content. And with that, we'll see you on the next video.